scowls and the threats of the last few days that then end up with the president sounding like she's his best friend. It's the politics, stupid. Trump is running for re-election. If he had not made a statement like this, the markets would have fallen out of bed again this morning. It's begun in Asia already overnight. And I think Trump is primarily focused on keeping enough of his accounts seeming to be successful that he just doesn't. He wants to sound confrontational to get the last bit of the deal. But I think he was looking at a continuing market hemorrhage. He didn't like what he saw. The language that he used this morning in a tweet about a half hour ago is almost fawning. He talks about the calm resolution of President Xi, and he's impressed that they're willing to come and state the facts so clearly. It's a concession wrapped in flattery, as near as I can tell. But, I think, Joe, he wants to calm the situation down because he knows that if continued turmoil takes him over the edge.
Trump blinks, and he keeps blinking, Steve Ratner. And again, this is something you could see coming on Friday when the president exploded. After exploding, he ordered companies out of China. He then claimed that he had authority to do that under the law and was even citing the law going into Saturday morning. But again, what really concerned him was the fact that, of course, he never thinks ahead, and that's a problem with a day trader. He doesn't realize, or he did not realize until this weekend, that President Xi's holding all the cards because he's not running for re-election. He can just wait Donald Trump out. So now we have the president who's gotten us out onto the cliff economically with tariffs and tariff taxes, and he's going to have to crawl on his hands and knees to China to try to get out of this crisis that he created.
Yeah, look, he has that exact problem, and what he's also very cognizant of are the stock markets. That every time he takes a very tough stand with China, and China in turn takes a tough stand with him, which is what you saw happen on Friday with these rounds of tariffs throughout the day, the stock market reacts badly. The stock market also, and business as a whole, and we can talk about what's going on in the general economy, which is really not good, but the stock market as a whole reacts badly to kind of indecisive leadership, to waffling, to flipping this way, to flipping that way. And so what you see is him trying to triangulate his way through a very difficult trade negotiation, and also and come out with something that he can defend with a straight face is actually a deal, and also do all that without avoiding cratering the American economy, which is on quite weak legs at the moment, largely because of Mr. Trump's own trade war.
And, Caddy, all weekend people were, around here at least, Meek and I and our friends were talking about the crazy tweets that Donald Trump was sending out, and the random tweets, the happy birthdays to Regis, and Sean Connery, by the way, happy birthday, Regis, and all of the distractions. I've been talking to all the G7 leaders, and they're all saying, why is America so great, but why is the press the enemy of the people? I mean, just absolute nonsense. It was so obviously a smokescreen. This all came back to China getting the best of him. It all came back to the damage he's causing to America and the world economy with tariffs. And you even had that surreal moment where Larry Kudlow was being interviewed by, I think it was Breonna Keller. She played a clip of Boris Johnson saying, we don't like tariffs. Tariffs are bad. And then you have Larry Kudlow accusing the CNN anchor of twisting words when all she had done was play clips. And they said, I don't even think that was from the G7 when you had the big G7 picture behind them. I mean, it was madness this weekend. It seems that Trump understands he's completely isolated on tariffs, and now he's, again, going to have to crawl begging to President Xi to get a deal.
And by the way, Larry Kudlow, who was the master of twisting words himself this weekend, when he said, oh, well, he just asked them to take a look at it. It was something he wanted to put on the table. And the president on Friday had said, I hereby order U.S. companies to get out of China, not exactly just taking a look at it. So that's clearly something that they've got to sort out themselves. Look, as the economy gets worse, as the prospect of a recession looms larger, it seems to cause the president, who has tied his own fortunes to the fate of the U.S. stock market, more and more stress. And he looks around, and what are the tools he has left in his toolbox to really gin up the U.S. economy? Not very many. I mean, he can get perhaps Jay Powell, who's under a huge amount of pressure, to bring interest rates down a little bit. There's not much he can do on taxes. That would have to go through Congress. That's going to be very difficult for him. A trade deal with China would be the most obvious thing that he could use to install confidence, at least in financial markets. And when he sends out tweets like he did on Friday, he's undermining his own strategy. He's undermining the one thing he could be doing to try to get the economy back on an even kilter, or one of the things he could be doing to try and get the economy back on an even kilter. So it's just been a weekend of chaos. And understandably, we wake up this morning and guess what? Asian markets think, hey, this is not going the way we want, and they're down again.
Yeah, you know, Michael Steele, I won't even ask where the Republicans are anymore. I mean, Lindsey Graham just said you have to accept the pain. Not really, because this is like Donald Trump taking a hammer and pounding the hand of consumers in America. You don't have to take the pain. The pain is self-inflicted pain. But, you know, let's just talk about the demise of a Republican Party that didn't out when Donald Trump ordered, like a tyrant, ordered American companies to leave China immediately, and then cited the statute that he said mistakenly gave the President of the United States absolute power to interfere with free enterprise. Or we could talk about the Republicans, Ben Sasse being quiet, Joni Ernst being quiet, Susan Collins being quiet, Cory Gardner being quiet, Tom Tillis being quiet. When the President of the United States called the Fed chair an enemy of America for simply saying what Republicans had always said about tariffs before Donald Trump became President of the United States. This is not a party that deserves a future if they can't even speak out against this madness.
Well, I think in large measure the party has abandoned that future long before this moment with this particular trip. There are too many other pieces of evidence that indicate, starting with the fact that we are now faced with over $1 trillion worth of deficits by the end of this year, not to mention the explosion of the debt itself by these same fiscally conservative Republicans. So this is consistent. They have acquiesced, capitulated some key fundamental principles around the economy, around issues like trade, around free markets, to the whims and wiles of a president who has neither the time nor the business sense to deal with these particularly difficult issues. The question going into the G7 was what, and typically in the past, Joe, as you know, has been, what's the strategic interest that the president is going to put out on the world stage that supports where America wants to go economically, militarily, et cetera. This conversation has already indicated we've already been all over the map. So folks at home, rational people are trying to figure out what to do with this and how do you then digest it. Republicans are basically saying,